Hi, we're Ariel.
And Michelle,
And
and
we're
we're
the
the
Board
Board
Game
Game
Tutors.
Tutors.
Today we're going to be doing Just the Basics, Part 3, for the card game Sylvion. Let's go ahead and get started.
All right, so here we have the cards laid out. Today we're going to be telling you about the Sylvan cards, which are basically the positive cards that you're going to use to help you in hopefully winning the game.
And so we already discussed how we select these cards in the mobilization phase, the Part 1 video of Sylvion. So we're not going to go over how mobilization works. We're just going to go in depth about what each of the Sylvan cards do.
And this should help you in choosing the cards when you do the mobilization phase.
And we'll make sure to point out different things like you should probably get a few of these cards. You should not have so many of these cards, etc. Because you don't want to have a really fat deck, because you want to have good cards that you can get access to, hopefully, very quickly. So let's go ahead and get started with fountains.
Okay. So fountains are basically what you use to combat the elementals, which are fire elementals, and those are the bad guys in the game that you are trying to fight against. So it makes sense that you would use water to put fire out. So there are different levels of strength that the fountains can have, and they're going to be more or less expensive depending on their strength. So you can see in the top left corner of each of these cards, we see the cost and that water droplet up at the top. So 0 or 1, 2, or 3. So those tell how many cards your partner will need to discard in order for you to play one of these cards. So you can see also in the leaf what the strength of the card is. So the one on the left has a strength of 1. The next one has a strength of 2, a strength of 3, and a strength of 4. So when you place these fountains, those strengths are going to determine what level of elemental they can destroy.
So one basic thing that you need to know about this is you have to choose carefully. Obviously, if this was my hand, I would choose which one I was going to place onto the board. And depending upon the water droplet cost, that's how many Michelle would have to pay for me when I was placing these fountains onto the board. So 0, 1, 2, or 3 cards, depending upon which card I played out of my hand. And I choose in the invisible grid up here where I want to place that fountain. And so basically, these cards don't have that much information. There's a little fountain picture, and that's just cute, I guess. It doesn't serve any purpose besides the fact that this is a tiny fountain. This is a huge fountain. That's the only thing you really need to know from the picture. What you really need to pay attention to are the numbers on the top left. So a level 0 fountain gives 1 strength point. So that means this fountain can defeat level 0 fire and level 1 fire. Anything above that, this fountain would be destroyed. And, well, there are more intricacies behind it, but that's the basics behind it. Same thing here. So this is a level 2 strength fountain. It can defeat level 0, level 1, and level 2 fire, respectively. So the only main rule about that is if the fire is the same strength as the fountain, then the fountain is destroyed along with the fire.
Right. And whenever a fountain card is destroyed, the active player gets to draw a card. So that's one benefit that you do get when a fountain card is destroyed.
And you might ask, who's the active player? It's the person playing cards, not the person paying for those cards, the person playing them. So let's do a quick example of how fire might interact with this fountain. So let's put this here. And so let's just say this was revealed already. This is a level 0 flame or fire elemental. So it would be progressing across the board, and as long as nothing else happened to it to make it a stronger fire, it would go here, and then it would go here. And when it bumps into this, what happens, Michelle?
Well, because it's a level 0 fire elemental, it's going to be destroyed by the fountain, which has a strength of 1. And because the 1 is greater than the 0, only the fire elemental is going to be destroyed. The fountain will still remain.
So that is what happens to that, and when it gets destroyed, let me just move this out of the way, it goes away into the discard pile. So it would go over there, off to the side. So now let's come up with another example where, we're not so lucky. Let's grab this card over here, because I looked at the cards already. This is a 3. That's not good. So
when the 3 arrives at the fountain, it's obviously a lot stronger than the level 1 that the fountain is at. So the fire elemental simply destroys the fountain. But like we said, the active player, the player whose turn it is going to get to at least draw a card as sort of a consolation. So you can think strategically when you're deciding whether to place a fountain. Maybe you know it's going to get destroyed, or you think it might get destroyed, but the active player will get to draw a card. So that's one thing to weigh when you're making that decision.
So let's say I really wanted to stop this fire, which I do, obviously. I'm going to put this fountain here instead. And so it's equal 3 and 3. So what happens in this event, Michelle?
So the fire elemental would be destroyed, and the fountain would be destroyed, and the active player would draw a card.
So I'm going to ravage the board a little bit. Ravage. So this would go to discard, the enemy discard pile, and this would go to my discard. So it would go over here in the blank space next to the draw pile. And so basically those would both get destroyed, but if I was the one playing, so I was the one who put this fountain down, then that means I would be able to draw one card because a fountain was destroyed. And so it doesn't matter if the fountain successfully defended or if the fountain just died miserably, burned to death by a flame. So basically, as long as the fountain is destroyed, you will get that one card.
Yeah, and the fountain may have been placed on the previous turn when the other person was taking their turn, and may have been placed on a turn before that. And this destruction happens when the elementals move, which is toward the beginning of the player's turn.
So yeah, and obviously the order of different things happening is a little confusing right now because you don't know exactly how turns work, but we're going to go over that in a future video. We're just going over how the cards work for now. So let me put this back where it belongs. And yeah, so basically, as you can see with these fountain cards, these are the primary way, not the only way, that you will be killing fire. So in terms of mobilization, you really want these level 4 fountains. It's a cost of 3 cards to buy it and place it on the board. It has a strength of 4. These will defeat every single fire that you will come across. Even if you come across level 4 fire, this will kill it. It will just die at the same time.
Right.
So the smaller fountains, you really don't want to have tons of those when you choose them. The level 2 strength and level 1 strength. 3s and 4s are what you really want to go for. So when you have a choice, go for a 4, go for a 3. And sometimes have a few 2s and 1s, but don't clutter your deck with a lot of them because they're not going to help you against a lot of the fire. Because as you'll see in a later video, the fire transforms rather quickly.
Right.
And then you can't kill it with a 1 or a 2. Okay, let's go ahead and push these aside. Okay, so you want to start talking about the next cards, Michelle?
Yeah, so now we're going to talk about the tree cards, which are especially important for the end of the game. In our experience, you generally want to try to place them on the board toward the end of the game. So
I'm just going to push these aside for right now, just so they're out of the way. But imagine they're there. Okay.
So during the game, as the fire elementals progress across the board and reach the edge cards, which you can see over here, they transform the forest. They turn those edge cards onto the destroyed side. I think it's called desolated. And so that's what you don't want, because at the end of the game, you need to have them all on the green side in order to win. That's called the bloom side.
Bloom. Desolated. That is bad. Green is good.
Yeah, desolated is bad, obviously. Okay, so the trees, they're not going to have much defense at all against fountains. Actually, they don't have any defense against fountains. I mean, sorry. They don't act like fountains. They don't have any defense against the elementals.
Except in this very, very weak sense. So level 0 fire, it's basically embers. So they can successfully defend against embers, but that is it. If a level 1 comes across, all trees will die against level 1. Because as you can see, their leaf value, their strength, is a 0. 0, 0, 0.
So even with a 0, they'd both get destroyed, but it would destroy the fire
the tree
along with itself.
Its life.
Yeah, exactly. So they literally will be destroyed by any elemental that comes to them.
Yeah, but let's just go over the rest of what the trees are. Personally, I think this is the only card that actually looks like a real tree.
Yeah.
But anyway, so let's go over card anatomy of these trees.
Okay, so up in the top left, you can see the cost to place the tree. So in this case, it's 0. 0 cards need to be played. And then the leaf shows 0, which means that it has a strength of 0. But the number at the bottom of the card is also important. This shows how many edge cards it can rejuvenate at the end of the game.
This says 1.
So if this tree card is out on the board when you get to the end of the game, it's going to allow you to flip one edge card from its desolated side, like that, flip it back to its bloom side.
Bloom.
And that is necessary to win the game if you have any cards that have been flipped to their desolated side.
So this thing, that does not really look like a tree to me, costs 1 card to put out, has a strength of 0, as we said, but flips 2 trees over at the end of the game. This only happens at the end of the game. This doesn't happen mid-game. It's at the very, very end of the game.
Yeah, so it's important, vitally important, that these trees are still out on the board when you get to the end of the game, or they've basically been wasted and not allowed the trees to rejuvenate.
This costs 2, has a strength of 0, and it rejuvenates 3 trees. This costs 3 cards. This has a strength of 0, as we said, and rejuvenates 4 trees. So obviously the best one, pretty expensive though. And yeah, so basically these trees, for a large portion of the beginning of the game, you're just going to be using these cards. If you put them out onto the board, it doesn't really help you. The trees will just die. Like, the fire will just burn them down. Towards the end of the game, then that's when you want to think about placing trees. And if you ever get lucky and a 0 fire comes out, you can kill a 0 fire with 1 basic tree. Any of these trees, actually. But the main thing you need to know about trees is you need to have them at the end to rejuvenate your edge cards. And these cards primarily are going to be used for currency. You're going to use these tree cards to pay for fountain cards. Because, like we said, you discard 1 card from your the person you're playing with's hand to pay for the fountains. So if you needed to, you'd get rid of these 2 cards to pay for your partner's level 2 fountain, I believe. I forget. But level 2 or level 3. I think it's level 2. Nope, I was wrong. Level 3.
So yeah, you would use them to help you buy other things, because as we said, you do have to sacrifice cards in order to buy or pay to put out other cards.
So you definitely want several trees when you mobilize at the beginning of the game. But the main thing you need to know is these will be your currency for a large portion of the game, to pay for fountains, to pay for other cards. So that way you can actually fight off the fire, because these are very weak in terms of fighting fire.
Right. Okay, so that was the fountain cards and the tree cards. Then we have the different kinds of animal cards, and there is a fair variety of different types of animal cards, so we're going to explain those now.
Here's the first one.
So these kind of look like the animals they represent and kind of don't, because as we said, the artwork is rather strange. Yeah, rather strange, and I guess whimsical. It's not our favorite style of art, but in any case.
Anyway, here's the first animal card.
So this is an elephant card. Kind of looks like a flower is coming out of it, but I don't know what that is. Anyway.
I guess it's shooting fire, maybe? I don't know. Use your imagination.
So as you can see from the water drop in the upper left-hand corner, this costs 1 card to put out. And so what this does, there's kind of a symbol at the bottom to help you understand it, but it basically lets you remove 1 elemental card from the battlefield or from the board. So one of the elementals that's out, sitting out there in the invisible grid, you would just play this card and remove that 1 elemental. So you get to choose.
So if Michelle had this card in her hand of 6 cards at the beginning of the game, obviously, it varies throughout the game how many cards you'll have in your hand. Ariel, would have to pay 1 card from my hand, put it in the discard pile for the good guys, and then this card would be eliminated from the game, put into the enemy discard pile over there. So that would be that. So that's how an elephant card works. This only works against elemental cards. It can also, blazing elementals, those are like the fiercer fires, the same deal. They also die with an elephant card.
Yeah, so it's pretty simple. As long as your partner can pay for it, you just remove any elemental card that's on the battlefield. Or also known as the board.
So obviously you use these to kill the really bad fire, because you really need to get rid of that bad fire. Okay, so let's go on to the next card now. Okay,
so that was the elephant. Then we have the whale. The whale lets you move an elemental card up to 3 spaces, and you can move, basically, I think it's called orthogonally. You can move up and down, left and right, as you can see from the picture. with the arrows.
Left, right.
So not diagonally, but 3 spaces. You could, for example, go down and then over and over, something like that. It's also important to note that you can use this card to move an elemental past another elemental. They don't interact with each other or anything like that.
That's not the card I wanted. This is the card that I wanted.
And the particularly useful way to move these is to move an elemental directly into a fountain and thereby destroy it.
So as we said in the previous example, here is a level 0 flame. Let's go ahead and get a little bit closer than that. So it's level 0 elemental flame. And this is a level 3 flame. This is a level 1 in terms of strength fountain. So this level 1 fountain will die once this 3 flame gets to it. But it can eliminate this 0. So what we might do is we can play this whale card and move it 3 spaces. So we could go 1, 2, 3. On top of the fountain, it dies, goes to discard pile. Or you could go this way, 1, 2, 3. So you can use the whale card to make flames pass through other flames. Obviously with the ultimate objective of throwing them into a fountain to kill them. But basically that's that. Or let's say the 0 was right here. If you played a whale card, you could go 1, 2, 3 to buy yourself a little more time.
Right.
So basically you move flames around, most likely into a fountain to kill it, but also just back to buy you some breathing space. Although, however, you cannot push a card back into the stack. Like, it's stuck in this space right here. You can't go any farther back.
Right.
Right? So that is that.
We don't know what a whale is doing in the forest, by the way.
It's eating fire. That's what it looks like.
Then we have the hedgehog cards, if you can believe these are hedgehogs.
Yeah, they look like porcupines, maybe.
Yeah. Similar. So these have a similar function to the elephant card, but they are unique because they let you affect the cards when they're first flipped over there.
So every enemy turn begins with flipping the top card of each of these 4 decks. So we would flip this card, this card, this card, and that card. So when we flip those cards, if there's anyone that we particularly dislike, this is when this card is played. So for example, I flip over all these cards, and I'm not going to flip over all of them because it's a little hard for me to do. But this is a 3. Let's say I really don't want that 3 to come out because maybe I had a level 1 fountain right there. I know the level 1 fountain can't take that 3. So I would play this hedgehog card right after this 3 was revealed to immediately eliminate that, put it in the enemy discard.
Right, so it's important for the active player to remember if they have a hedgehog card to go ahead and use it right away.
And the sad thing is, if you're playing a 2-player game, and let's say it's my turn, Ariel's turn, and Michelle has a hedgehog card, she cannot play that hedgehog card for me because it is my turn.
Right.
So only if I have the hedgehog card when the cards are flipped at the beginning of the enemy turn, that is when I play the hedgehog card. So something else, yeah, basically that's what this card accomplishes, and it's free, so that's cool. So you're definitely going to want some of these. And next card.
Okay, these are the doves. And again, they have a picture that kind of helps you understand it. The cost is 1 card, as you can see from the 1 and the water droplet. And then looking down here, basically this allows you to eliminate the top card from each of the ravage piles over there, the bad guys.
So the hedgehog card was cool because once you flip these cards, you can choose which one you want to eliminate immediately, and it's free. But this dove card eliminates every single top card of each deck, but only when at the beginning of your turn. So the enemies have taken their turn, moved across the board, completed everything that they could do. Then you would play this dove card on your turn. Because basically the way the turns are divided is bad guys do all that they're going to do. That's their half of the turn. Then you do what you want to do. That's your half of the turn. So this is when you your half of the turn is when you play a dove card. Right.
So when you play the dove card, you haven't seen what the next ravage cards are going to be. You're just sort of guessing and hoping that you're getting rid of some bad ones.
So that is that.
And there's one other card you can pair this with, which we'll be talking about in a moment, that can make it a little easier to know whether you want to play this card.
Right. So that's that.
Okay, so it's not the very next card, but coming soon. In the meantime, here we have the owl card. This one
looks like a very strange owl.
Yeah, it's interesting. This one costs 1 card from your partner's hand for you to play it. And as you can see from the symbol, it lets a player draw 3 cards. And in this case, in a 2-player game, this happens for your partner.
Yes.
So your partner is going to draw 3 cards and add them to their hand, which will help them play cards on their turn.
So if Michelle played this owl during her half of her turn, basically, then she would not draw 3 cards. I, Ariel, would draw 3 cards. So basically, the main advantage to that is now I have 3 extra cards, so I can hopefully pay for an expensive card that she needs to do.
Right.
Level 4 fountain, for example.
Right. Or possibly he's just drawn more cards that will be helpful for him to play on his turn.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, so you can use this to give your partner more cards, to give them more flexibility in terms of choice of what they want to play during their turn, or stuff to pay during your turn.
Mm-hmm. So that's the owl. Then we have the stag. The stag is slightly complicated to remember, but it's really not that bad.
Yeah.
You don't have to pay any cards to play this one, as you can see from the 0 and the water droplet.
Mm-hmm. He has very interesting antlers.
Yeah. So this stag is going to help you with flipping over edge cards. And there are 2 ways that he can help you with that. One is that he'll just allow you to flip over 2 edge cards from their desolated side to their bloom side, as we talked about.
Desolated, flipped. And he lets you do this for 2 of them. That's what the +2 means.
Yep.
Or
if you have 3 or more trees on the battlefield, like in this example, there are 4 trees on the battlefield, then you're going to get to flip 1 edge card for each tree that's on the battlefield. So in this case, you could actually flip 4 edge cards from their desolated to their bloom side.
So obviously, it's pretty awesome that you can flip 2 just straight up. Or if you have enough trees on the board, you can flip over multiples. But obviously, if you only have 2 trees on the board, you don't really, you'd have the same effect as the first half of this statement.
Mm-hmm.
But if you had 3, 4, obviously 3 or more, it's worth it to play this card to flip over 3 or however many you have out.
Mm-hmm.
So that is that.
Yeah, so in most cases, you can't flip edge cards until the end of the game based on the trees that are on the board. But in this case, you actually can flip edge cards sooner.
Yeah, for you impatient people, the stag is for you.
And it helps you hopefully last the game a little easier.
Yeah, like we said, the fire is relentless. So let's say you lost 8 trees. You really would be hurting at that point. So you would probably place 4 trees out and play a stag to get up 4 at least of those 8 that you lost.
Mm-hmm.
All right, next card.
Okay, then we have the fish, which are somehow coming to help the forest.
Yes.
This has a cost of 1, so your partner plays 1 card in order for you to, or pays 1 card in order for you to play this. And then it gives 3 points, I guess.
Of buying power, I guess.
Yeah, toward buying a card. So it's kind of like paying, getting 3 for the price of 1, I guess.
Mm-hmm. So basically, so let's do an example. So if I play this, Ariel, play this card, then Michelle, my partner, would pay 1 card for me to activate this fish card. Hello, fish. And then now it's essentially as if Michelle gave 3 cards instead of that 1.
Yeah.
So she gave 3 cards. Now I also have this in my hand. This has a cost of 3. This can now be placed onto a board. It's a level 4 fountain. So it's kind of confusing because it costs 3, but it's level 4. It's a little confusing. But
yeah.
Basically, so now this, since I, Ariel, discarded this fish card, I now have 3 currency droplets to build a fountain with. And, oh, look, 3. Yay. I can build this expensive fountain for, do the math, it's just 1 card.
Yeah, so you can kind of transfer this 3 water droplet to this other 3 water droplet.
Mm-hmm. So this fish card is very useful for paying for the more expensive things. Or let's say you wanted to put a level 1 fountain, a level 2 fountain. you can split up that cost however you want.
Right,
It
just on the turn.
It just doesn't transfer to your partner's next turn.
Yeah, just you can use it up on your turn only.
And the last card.
So finally, we have the Squirrels. This is the one that we alluded to earlier. This one is useful when given the opportunity to play before the Dove cards because it lets you look at the top 2 cards in the Ravage decks on the side.
And costs 1, obviously.
Yeah.
So basically, this can be cool because, so let's draw the top 2 cards from this bottom deck. You have to keep it clear about what's what. But yeah, basically you'd flip over these 2 cards. So this was on the top and this was on the bottom. Now, because of these handy arrow symbols there, now you know, okay, well this one's going to come out next and this one's going to come out right after it. So I don't really want this fire to come out, so I'm going to switch the order and put the fire on the bottom and the effect on top.
So you're allowed to look at the top 2 cards on each of these decks, and then you can either put them back the way you got them, or you can flip them around, but they do have to stay with the original deck that they came from.
Yeah, you can't take those 2 cards and move them there, for example. So I would repeat that process for this one, this one, this one, and that one. Okay, so that is the Squirrels.
So if you happen to play the Squirrels and then have the Dove card to play, you could decide, okay, I saw those top 4, I want to get rid of them, or they're not so bad, maybe I'll wait and play the Dove card later.
Okay, and so let's lastly just go over these cards briefly in terms of mobilization and which cards are really useful, which cards are semi-useful, that sort of thing. So these are all those cards. Let me just make sure there's nothing else over here, but yeah, there's not. Okay, so let's go over them. Squirrels, semi-useful. It just depends. Having 1 or 2 of those in your deck can be pretty helpful to see what's coming, rearrange a little bit, and try to use in combination with a Dove card, because Dove cards are pretty awesome in terms of you eliminate 4 cards straight out, so that's 4 fewer cards to deal, Ravage cards you have to deal with. So that's interesting, but obviously that's after the bad guys take their turn. So that's that. So a few of those are pretty good. Elephants, definitely necessary.
Yep.
You get rid of really powerful fire using an elephant, as you can see with this thing that kind of looks like a flower, but I'm assuming it's fighting fire.
And yeah, the elephants are just really nice because you get one and you're like, okay, I'm eliminating that elemental.
Yeah, straight out. So that's a level 4. Let's get rid of that guy. This whale, very useful card as well. Having a few of these in your deck are definitely helpful because this gives you movement of fire. This gives you straight up killing fire. Hedgehogs, also a very good card. If a particularly devastating card was going to come out, but you can eliminate that 1 card at the beginning of the enemy turn, excellent, very useful in terms of planning for defeating the fire.
Yeah, and it can allow you to prevent a negative effect before it takes place.
Right. So let's say like you had 3 fire cards and 1 effect card. You can use this to eliminate the effect card. So now that fire will not be a blazing fire. It will just be a mediocre fire.
Right.
Okay. Owls, pretty useful. You can take them or leave them. I don't know.
Yeah, it's kind of medium. Like they can be helpful, but it just depends. They're not like the most exciting to use, for example.
Stags, definitely want a few of those in your deck because, like we said, even if you have absolutely no trees on the board, which it's just hard to keep trees alive with all the fire that's coming at you, it gives you 2 flipped, desolated trees back to their bloom side, which can definitely keep you alive in the game. And lastly, fish, they're pretty crucial as well. They help you pay for the more expensive things. Instead of having to spend 3 cards out of your partner's hand, now you'd only have to spend 1. So really useful for more expensive things. So yeah, those were all of the cards for the Sylvan cards in the game Sylvion. Obviously, this doesn't include expansions and stuff which come with the base game, but yeah, those are more complicated, so we're not talking about them in this video. And yeah, a little bit of tips in terms of which cards you should take in mobilization. If you have much of a choice, having some trees but not a lot is a good idea. You don't need to go for every dove and every squirrel that's there. Yeah, obviously an owl, for example, but not like I'm saying go for all of these cards. when you do mobilization, but you just have to see what comes at you, and definitely have a few of each of these: the fish, the stag, the hedgehog, the whale, and the elephant.
Right.
And yeah, obviously that's everything for Sylvan Cards.
All right, thanks so much for watching this video. We really appreciate it. We really appreciate you subscribing, sharing this video, giving us likes or comments, letting us know if you have any questions. And yeah.
Please check us out on BoardGameGeek.com, the Board Game Tutors. That's our username. One word, the Board Game Tutors. And yeah, we hope to see you guys in the next video.
All right, thanks so much for watching. Bye.
Bye, everybody.